Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this video, we will cover how frequently exercises should be changed in a program for hypertrophy training. So why do we even need to change exercises in the first place? There are a few reasons why trainees may need to change exercises in their training program. Let's now cover what these reasons are. The first is to provide variation to the training stimulus. This refers to changing training variables to provide a new stimulus to adapt to. This can be achieved by changing rep ranges, loads, rest periods, technique, tempo, and more, and one way to achieve this is through changing exercises. Hypertrophy can still be achieved in the long term with the same core group of exercises, although new exercises provide variation in different ways. Changing exercises will load the muscle fibers in a slightly different way and place more or less tension at different portions of the range of motion. If a trainee trains with a range of different exercises across a training career, they may experience more uniform hypertrophy across the span of the muscle. If the exercise always loads the muscle in the same way, different regions of the same muscle may be emphasized over other regions. Another reason that changing exercises may be useful is to emphasize different muscles. Trainees may find that performing the same exercises over time tends to develop certain muscle groups more than others. This may be due to different muscles' genetic response to training, how the lift is performed, or simply the nature of what muscle the exercise targets. Therefore, trainees can change exercises to a similar variation, but one which emphasizes a lagging muscle group. For example, a trainee can perform a range of different compound pressing movements, which all train the chest, shoulders, and triceps to some extent. An overhead press will emphasize the shoulders, an incline press will emphasize the upper chest and shoulders, a flat press may be a good overall chest developer, and dips will emphasize the triceps. Therefore, trainees can change exercises over time to emphasize different muscle groups over others. Another reason why changing exercises may be useful is due to the individual's joint tolerance to the movement. Some trainees will find that certain lifts naturally tend to stress particular joints or connective tissues. This may be due to technique or inappropriate loading, but it may also just be a naturally irritating exercise for some people. In this case, trainees can change exercises to find those which allow a good training stimulus and which feel comfortable on the joints. Furthermore, performing the same lifts over time also loads the same tissues in the same way all the time. This may lead to excessive stress on particular joints due to the repetitive loading patterns occurring. Changing exercises may relieve some stress on the irritated tissues by shifting tension to other tissues. And the last potential reason why changing exercises may be useful is due to the mental monotony. Performing the same exercises for long periods of time can become somewhat uninteresting, for lack of a better term. Introducing a new exercise into the program may simply provide trainees with an exciting variation to their usual training routine, even if it has no physiological benefits. When a new exercise is performed, trainees may be more enthusiastic about training and are likely to be more concentrated throughout their workout. Making training an enjoyable process is very important for longevity. Because we know that it generally takes many years to see significant muscle growth, we need to find ways to make training enjoyable. If we don't adhere to training in the first place, then all other nuanced details don't matter at all. So the question now becomes, when should we change exercises? Should we change exercises every session, every week, every mesocycle, or every year? Well, the answer is not that simplistic. While there is no strict rules, there are numerous factors which will influence our decision of when to change exercises. Let's now cover what these factors are. The first factor to consider is neural efficiency. This refers to the ability to recruit and produce maximal force with all muscle fibers involved in a lift. Neural adaptations occur quite quickly and tend to plateau after a short while. This is why novice trainees can experience drastic improvements in strength when they first start training, and then this rapid progress starts to stagnate. The initial improvements in strength are largely due to improvements in neural efficiency, while only a small contribution comes from actual increases in muscle mass. Neural adaptations are specific to each exercise we perform. This means that we only become neurally efficient at the exercises we practice, and there is minimal transfer between lifts. Furthermore, neural efficiency is a temporary state, which only peaks when the specific lift is practiced. So when we introduce a new exercise into a program, the trainee is initially not accustomed to that lift. Depending on their level of advancement, their experience with that lift and the exercise itself, the trainee may need a couple of weeks or up to multiple months to regain their peak neural efficiency. Furthermore, different lifts are more complex than others from a neural perspective. Compound lifts with multiple muscles working simultaneously and those which require trunk bracing will generally take longer to reach peak efficiency. Isolation lifts only involve one primary muscle working and one joint moving, which means they will take much less time to become efficient with. This will impact the hypertrophic stimulus of the lift, as we want to be able to recruit and produce high forces with the target muscle we are trying to train. If we don't allow enough time to maximize efficiency, we will limit how much load can be lifted and recruitment of muscle fibers. This will limit how much stress we can expose the working muscle to and minimize the overall hypertrophic stimulus of the exercise. So as a general rule, complex multi-joint lifts probably shouldn't be changed as frequently because they require a longer time to become efficient with, and therefore to be maximally hypertrophic. However, isolation lifts can be changed more frequently because neural efficiency will peak in a shorter time frame and therefore be maximally effective sooner. The second factor to consider is lifting technique. When training for hypertrophy, we want to use a technique that provides maximal stress to the target muscle, not the technique that allows us to lift the most weight. This technique will generally take a while to develop by making small adjustments over time. Trainees can keep finding ways to make technique more effective over time. Therefore, trainees should ensure that an exercise is performed consistently for a long enough duration so that trainees can develop and refine their technique to make it effective for muscle growth. If exercises are changed too frequently, technique may not become maximally effective. And the last consideration which will influence our decision of when to change exercises is monotony and staleness. If an exercise is performed consistently for a long duration of time, it can eventually become stale from both a physiological and psychological perspective. Like we mentioned in the previous point about variation, changing exercises can provide a novel training stimulus to adapt to. However, changing exercises may also provide a mental boost in training motivation. Trainees shouldn't rely on performing new exercises as motivation to train in the long term, but introducing a new exercise into a program can increase enthusiasm and excitement in the short term. As we mentioned previously, this can help with long-term adherence to training by making training more exciting. So now that we have covered why changing exercises may be appropriate and the factors which determine when an exercise should be changed, let's now cover how to implement this practically. To demonstrate this idea, let's use a simple upper body push day as an example. So in this session, we will include a horizontal press, a chest isolation exercise, a delt isolation movement, and a triceps isolation lift. For this initial example, we have chosen the flat bench press, low to high cable flies, dumbbell lateral raise, and triceps pushdown. Let's say these exercises are performed consistently for 2 mesocycles. Then in the third mesocycle, the trainee may want to try a different delt exercise, so they change this to a cable lateral raise and keep all other exercises the same. After another 2 mesocycles, the trainee may be getting bored of the triceps pushdown, so they change to a skull crusher instead. After another 2 mesocycles, the trainee may want to change the chest movements to provide a different stimulus to the chest fibers. So here we can see that the bench press has been replaced with an incline bench press to emphasize the upper chest more, and the cable flies have been changed to a mid-range fly rather than a low to high variation. So now we have seen how trainees can change exercises on a global level, let's cover how this may look from a more detailed level. One factor we need to consider when prescribing programming details is injury risk associated with changing exercises. As we mentioned, when we change exercises, there is a change in how the tissues are loaded. It is well established that sudden changes in workload are associated with an increased risk of injury. So when changing exercises in a program, we need to ensure there is a gradual change in tissue loading, not a sudden spike. This gradual transition can be achieved by starting with slightly lower volumes and a slightly further proximity from failure. Let's take our example from before to explain this concept. As we can see, we have our example push day that we established previously. We have the bench press, low to high cable flies, dumbbell lateral raise, and triceps pushdown. Across a 4-week mesocycle, let's say the trainee performs 4 sets of each exercise for a regular overloading week and 3 sets in week 1 as a deload week. All isolation lifts are taken to a proximity to failure of 0 to 1 reps in reserve, while the bench press is taken to 1 to 2 reps in reserve. Let's say we were to change the bench press to the incline bench press like we had in the previous example. In this case, we wouldn't want to keep all variables the same and just change exercises, as this would increase our injury risk slightly. Instead, it may be wise to start the mesocycle with a slightly lower volume and a slightly further proximity to failure. For example, week 1 may only include 2 sets with 3 to 4 reps in reserve. Week 2 includes 3 sets with 2 to 3 reps in reserve, and weeks 3 and 4 are back to 4 sets with 1 to 2 reps in reserve. This gradual ramp in volume and intensity will provide a smooth transition between exercises to ensure trainees are minimizing injury risk. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already.